Teotihuacan, the city of Thoth. That's why the pyramid there, the Pyramid of the Sun, is the same exact dimensions of the base of the Great Pyramid at Giza. The alignment is the same alignment with Orion at the Great Pyramid and the other two pyramids that are sitting there on the Giza Plateau. Both pyramids are built on top of aquifers, right? And the Pyramid of the Sun, which is the larger pyramid at Teotihuacan, is exactly 50% the height of the pyramid at Giza, the Great Pyramid at Giza. It's the same architect, same exact architect. His name is Thoth. He went there with Africans from Africa and built the Teotihuacan civilization. They extended all throughout Mesoamerica, all down into Tulum, down in through the jungle, into the Yucatan Peninsula, down into Chichen Itza. All of that was built. The Mayans built nothing. And they admit they built nothing in their own records. They will teach you this when you go study archaeology and ancient civilizations in college. The Mayans built absolutely nothing. They had no knowledge. They inherited what was already there. The Aztecs, who came a couple hundred years after the Mayans, also inherited what was there. The Aztecs were another part of Mesoamerica where they were living in a valley. That valley had a volcanic eruption. The mountain behind them was a volcano. It was active. It erupted. It destroyed everything. Some of them died. They had to go find a new place to live. As they journeyed through the jungle, they stumbled upon Teotihuacan. And guess what? They moved right on in. Again, they built nothing. They built nothing. It was already there. The moon is called Lamu in the ancient Mesopotamian and Babylonian texts. It's in the tablets, and it used to be a moon of an orbiting moonlet of Tiamat. Just like Jupiter has all those moons, well, Tiamat had a lot of moons too. Tiamat was the third planet originally, and it was 4 to 6 times larger than Earth. Massive planet, supermassive, with water and life and land. And Tiamat, now in the early part of the solar system, during the early years, our solar system gravitationally captured another mini solar system. Okay, it was a brown dwarf with planets orbiting it. One of those planets, one of those moons, one of those planets crashed into Tiamat, breaking it into pieces. A huge chunk stormed away became the Earth, taking a lot of the life and water and everything with it, recoalesced as the Earth. It also gravitationally tugged the moon along with it, so the moon came into orbit. Now, much later, you find that the Anunnaki had visited the moon and converted the moon into a way station or a base, a moon base. They hollowed out a lot of the interior of this structure. They built substructures underneath the surface, and they made an entire base on the opposite side. And what they did was they set the moon into a locked orbit with Earth, to where only one side shows as we spin. As we rotate on our axis, the moon rotates at the same exact speed, only giving us one face, while they hide themselves on the opposite side. We call it the dark side of the moon. We discovered objects on the dark side of the moon in a mission called the Clementine mission. The Clementine mission was a military satellite, a low lunar orbiting satellite that was sent up, and it was on a low lunar orbit, and it crashed into structures on the opposite side of the moon and never came home. The ancient Commission gods didn't come from Earth at all. They came from somewhere else. And so every account, and this is not a Billy Carson idea. This is the text. This is the ancient Egyptians, the records that they left behind, and the glyphs that they left carved into temples in Egypt. They say they came from the sky, and according to them, they came from different star systems. This is well documented. So these people came from space. There are people living in space and on other planets and other solar systems that look just like us. You know why? Because human beings were seeded on this planet. Earth is an abandoned seed colony. Say that again. Earth is an abandoned seed colony. We were taken advantage of about 200,000 years ago when these Atlantean people came here, and some of them decided to masquerade as gods and pimp us for labor. Let's look at genetics. You look at genetics and you find that they found a 2% variance between DNA and genes in different races of people. and they discovered something interesting. We've been lied to. Black people aren't black because our ancestors were in the sun. White people aren't white because their ancestors lived in mountains. Native Americans aren't yellow because they eat corn and all this crazy foolishness. So what they found was that there's a 2% variance in genes, even though we still are the human race. There's a 2%, and that 2% would take hundreds of millions of years through natural evolution to happen. So scientists have come to the conclusion, geneticists have come to the official conclusion, it was artificially done about 200,000 years ago. When did the Sumerian tablets say? The Sumerian tablets say that human beings were subjugated to labor, to work for them. About when? 200,000 years ago. Chromosome number 2, by geneticists in our current day, discovered that it was fused and telomere caps were put on it. About how long ago? About 200,000 years ago. And they say it was an artificially done thing. It wasn't through evolution. So you go ancient text back to modern science, you start seeing these synchronicities. And so what it looks like to me is that these beings were a mixed race of people as they spread around the planet to duplicate, rebuilding the land of Chem and different parts of the earth, which is why you see pyramids everywhere and temples everywhere that resemble each other with slightly different motif on them. The people that ruled over those class of people genetically modified them to look like them. And that's why we have multiple races of people on the planet, because the people that ruled over us in those regions in that deep antiquity were different races of people. Beings of this body type exist throughout the entire galaxy. They don't talk about any other galaxies. They predominantly talk about our galaxy. But there's one interesting similarity that's in this indigenous Native American text. It's the War of the Gods. Another war. And this war is between the empire. So there's an empire that's negative and dark going against the rebels. Sounds familiar? Sounds like Star Wars. As a matter of fact, that ancient text reads just like the Star Wars saga. When you read it, you realize George Lucas probably came across this text and then turned it into a Hollywood movie. And I'm not mad at him. I mean, it's an amazing series of movies he made. I love them. But he got his inspiration from these ancient texts. This is where he got the idea from. People from the Pleiades spreading out into other star systems. Why did they leave that star cluster, the Pleiadian star cluster? They left because of this war. There's a war in the Terafavors. There's a war in the Mahabharata. There's a war in the Bhagavad Gita. There's a war in the Bible. There's a war in the Greek text. There's a war in the Indian Vedas. There's a war in the Sanskrit text. Everywhere you look, there's this war in the heavens. And what happens in each one of these wars? People flee. But where are they fleeing to? If you're fleeing from the heavens. They're looking for other places to live. We create the first space refugees in these wars. Refugees coming from Ukraine and Palestine and all that. That's not new. These people were space refugees. There's a huge hole in the ground in China where they discovered this entire, totally separate ecology. And the geology is totally separate from what's above land. And there's light, there's trees and forests and lakes and rivers and all this stuff down there. And yes, it's real. As a matter of fact, there's a few places like that on Earth. There's another one down in South America. Now, these things exist. The one I was trying to go to was a 4-hour hike to get there. And a 4-hour hike, and then it's very, very rugged terrain. And then you have to rappel about 200 meters into this opening in the earth, and then you land in an area where there's an actual beach. Underground, there's a beach, okay? And then it's got its own system down there. Forests, jungles, there's light that gets down there, animals that live down there and everything else. So there are these giant openings in the earth that open up. No, not a hollow earth, but you gotta realize the mass of the earth itself allows for massive openings in areas that can hold maybe even millions of people. because we only live on the outside surface, the skin. There's so much mass on this planet, you know, in terms of the depth that it has. In there are huge openings that go on for hundreds of miles, sometimes maybe even for thousands of miles. These honeycomb-shaped openings that life exists down there. Kem does not mean black, but it's known as the land of the black people in ancient times. And the black people that ruled over that land, in the Sumerian tablets, they were called the black-faced people. In the Sumerian, that's the way it actually translates in cuneiform, ancient Babylonian and Akkadian. It says the black-faced people. And then you had the Dogon tribe, which actually were the original inhabitants of the land of Kem, which were black people that ruled over that land long before the dynastic era. And then they were overthrown and moved out into Mali, Africa, which they remain today in Mali, Africa. The words Kem were given, the name Kem was given to that land by Thoth, the Atlantean priest king. And that's where he began to teach chemistry and alchemy. And those two things were taught by Thoth, the Atlantean priest king. Hence that land became the land known as the land of Kem. Much later, it became Egypt, way later, thousands of years later, and then it began they began starting the dynastic eras, the dynastic period, okay? But that was long, long after it was the land of Kem. We live in a binary solar system. Binary, which we have two. Our yellow sun, it looks yellow from Earth, but in truth, reality in space is actually white. But because of light diffraction, all right, the way that light comes through the atmosphere, and then light is fractalized and broken apart, we primarily see the yellow color. However, there's another sun out there that orbits our sun, and that sun is a brown dwarf. And that brown dwarf has planets orbiting it. And this is now mainstream, well-known science. It's not pseudoscience, not something I made up. It's actually in the astrophysics books now. There's another object orbiting our sun with planets orbiting it. It's in the inner Oort cloud zone, is what they call it in astrophysics, the inner Oort cloud zone. But it's beyond the orbit of Pluto, and it orbits our sun every 4,200 years. There's a planet orbiting it that's 4 to 6 times larger than Earth. This is the famed Nibiru from the ancient Sumerian tablets in the Enuma Elish. Okay? It does exist, and it's out there, still orbiting till this very day. The ancient Cometian gods didn't come from Earth at all. They came from somewhere else. And so every account, and this is not a Billy Carson idea. This is the text. This is the ancient Egyptians, the records that they left behind, and the glyphs that they left carved into temples in Egypt. They say they came from the sky. And according to them, they came from different star systems. This is well documented. So these people came from space. There are people living in space on other planets in other solar systems that look just like us. You know why? Because human beings were seeded on this planet. Earth is an abandoned seed colony. Say that again. Earth is an abandoned seed colony. We were taken advantage of about 200,000 years ago when these Atlantean people came here, and some of them decided to masquerade as gods and pimp us for labor. We find out that Enlil is really the evil one. He's known as Satan, the Lord of Eden. He was really jealous of his brother, who was very kind and nice to humans and wanted to enlighten humans and wake them up to who they really were. Matter of fact, he told humans that they had the potential to be more powerful than even them. And so because of this, Enlil was pissed off at his brother. Enlil then started telling the people that his brother was the evil one, even though he really was the evil one. And that they shouldn't listen to him, they should listen to, you shouldn't listen to him, you should listen to me. This is what Enlil was telling people. So in true reality, if you're into worshiping Satanism and things like that, what you're doing is you're worshiping Enlil, the evil brother out of the two, between Enki and Enlil. Enki was, even what Enki did when he did a genetic modification. He added something extra in the genetic modification that his brother found out about that almost made them go to war against each other. Then you can find out about this in the myth of Adapa, which is Adam. The myth of Adapa. Look at that ancient text. You find out that Adapa was created to be even higher than the Anunnaki themselves. And who was responsible for that? Enki. Okay? So it's pretty interesting. And also, who sends Thoth back to the land of Chem to create Zep Tepi, to turn mud back into a kingdom? It was Enki. Who saved Noah? It was Enki. And this is just, Enki is the one doing all the private secret interactions and trying to keep mankind going, and Lil is the one that keeps trying to take them down. And Lil was, if you read the tablets, when there's too many people in one population and he thinks that the people are getting too loud, he would just have his guards go and kill off the people. He would dry out their crops so they could starve to death. You know, he said the humans are making too much noise, you know, kill them. He would just kill people like they were nothing. They meant nothing to him. So Enlil is actually Satan. Antarctica. Now, first and foremost, there is no ice wall. Doesn't exist. So if you think there's an ice wall, get it out of your head. That's more pseudoscience. Doesn't exist. Okay? Antarctica is an amazing place. First and foremost, Antarctica was not in the original location it's in right now. Antarctica shifted into that spot. Okay? If you go back, if you were able to rewind the geological time clock, you discover that based on tectonic plate movement, the movement of the plates of the crust of the earth over the magma, you discover that Antarctica was actually closer to the equator. How do we know this? We know this because the ice caps are melting. Antarctica ice is melting right now, and it has been for quite some time. And guess what we're finding in Antarctica? We're finding animals that were flash frozen. Animals that were flash frozen. How can that happen? That means that when the tectonic plates shifted, the landmass moved from equator to a northern position extremely fast. Okay? Extremely fast. Creating two problems. One, a global flood, because when you move that much mass, you're going to displace liquid. And that displaced liquid washes over the land, creates a global flood. Global floods don't come from rain. They come from land masses shifting. Okay? The second thing that you have is every animal, plants, and everything else are flash frozen. Now, what more evidence do we have of this besides the way that they've been preserved? When they do an autopsy on these deceased animals and they cut them open, guess what they find? Undigested food in their stomachs. The food in their stomachs is not digested, which means they were frozen very, very fast. Which means that they came from an area that was much warmer, more tropical before it shifted into that location. And they're also finding a lot of crazy things under the ice, remnants of ancient civilizations that are just now starting to be seen. So Antarctica is really an amazing place, and there's going to be so many amazing discoveries coming out of that place. It's just up to whether they decide to disclose them to us or